Hey everybody, we're going to be looking at a review for a test that you're going to be taking on Friday. Solve each of the problems below. These represent the types of questions on your test. Be sure to ask questions if you need more help with this topic or with a topic. Okay, so I can model addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division of integers. So what we're looking at is, remember the red for your negatives? Remember that? All of those that are colored are really supposed to be red, okay? And then the other ones are going to be yellow. Those are your positives. All of your positives are yellow, so just think about that as you are working through these. Okay, write an equation for the model below. -4, that's what these are. And then I'm adding to that 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So -4 plus 6 equals 2. Remember, the bigger team wins, so the positive's 1. Here we have -8. I've got 2, 4, 6, 8. -8, but they subtracted out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. -8 minus the -5. So it's almost like the -5 doesn't exist anymore. Remember, it's like add a line, change the sign. So it's really -8 plus the 5, which equals -3. That's going to help you with your test. Okay, next we're looking at number lines. Write an equation for the model below. So we have 3, so you go forward 3, but then -9. So you're really just subtracting a 9. So you go backwards 9 and you end up with a -6, okay? Here we have 2 jumps of -5 in this direction, and we end up with -10. Remember, a positive times a negative is going to give you a negative. Sketch a model to represent -6 plus 3. Well, here's our -6, and then we added to that 3, which is here, and -6 plus 3 is -3 because I have a larger negative number than a positive. Sketch a model to represent -8 minus the -4. So remember, add a line, change the sign. That's really -8 minus the -4 is really -8 plus 4. That's going to give me a -4 as my answer. Let's look at our next number line. Sketch a model to represent 5 minus 14. Well, I have a larger negative, so I'm going to end up with -9. And it shows going forward to the 5, but then going back your 14, and that ends up being at the -9. Sketch a model to represent 2 times -3 equals -6. Well, a positive times a negative is going to give you a negative. 2 times 3 is 6, and it is negative because that's a -3. I have 3 at each jump, and I have 2 jumps, and it ends up being -6. Number 9, sketch a model to represent -6 divided by 2. Again, I have a negative and a positive. My answer has to be a negative. -6 divided by 2 gives me -3. Sketch a model to represent 5 times 2. Well, I've got 5 in 2 groups. 5 times 2 is 10. Determine the solution to each problem below. 5 minus your -7. So that's really add a line, change a sign, and 5 plus 7 is 12. Number 16. I'm just going to kind of go across. I have 13 minus the 5. Since the negative is larger, I'm going to end up with -2 when I subtract. This one is add a line, change a sign, -8 minus the -10. It's going to look like this, -8 plus 10. So that gives me a positive 2 right there. Now we're looking at 26. Like I said, I'm just kind of going all the way across. 7 minus the negative 2. So add a line, change a sign. That's really 7 minus your negative 2. It's really 7 plus 2, which equals 9. Next question. 8 plus negative 11. Since I have a positive and a negative, the negative is larger. It's negative 3 when you subtract. Negative 3 plus your negative 1, you're really just adding these negatives together and you end up with negative 4. 16, and you're adding negative 4 to that, and 16 minus 4 is going to be 12. It's still positive because 16's absolute value is more. Negative 1, and I'm adding a negative 15 to that. So that's really just like 15 plus 1 is 16, and it is a negative. Negative 3 times, negative 6 times negative 6. A negative times a negative gives you a positive. So 6 times 6 is 36. Okay, 14, and I'm going to be multiplying that by 3. It's a negative 3, so that's going to give me a negative answer. When I multiply 14 times 3, I get 42, and it has to be a negative. 12 times 7 for the next one. It's positive 84. Negative 20 times 3. It's a negative times a positive. My answer's a negative 60. Now this is really negative 12. And then I'm adding to that the negative 7, which is going to give me the negative 19. 10 minus the negative 16. 10 minus the negative 16. So I've got 10, and I'm going to subtract out the 16. That's really an addition problem now. So I'm looking at 10 minus the negative 16. Add a line, change the sign. It's 10 plus 16, and I'm going to get 26 for my answer. Number 24. I have negative 13 minus 4. I'm really adding that negative 4 to the negative 13, and that gives me the negative 17. It would look like this, negative 13, and I'm adding to that a negative 4. That's what it would look like. Number 29, negative 16, but I'm subtracting negative 3 from that. So if I add a line, change the sign, that's negative 16 minus the negative 3. Looks like this, negative 16 plus 3. Well, negative is the larger of the two, so I'm going to end up with the negative 13 as my answer. Number 15, I have negative 6 divided by 6. Well, 6 divided by 6 is 1, and since I have opposite, the positive and the negative, it's going to end up being negative 1. Here we have positive 45 plus the negative 5. So, that's divided by, not an addition sign. That's a divided by. 45 divided by 5. That gives me a negative 9 because I'm multiplying a positive times a negative. I get a negative. Here I have negative 30, and I'm dividing it by the negative 15. I have a negative, and I am dividing it by a negative. That gives me a positive, so 2. Just positive 2. Negative 42, and I'm dividing by negative 7. That's going to be a positive 6 because a negative and a negative is a positive. If you remember your little person, that will help you. If it's a negative and a negative, it's a positive, okay? And if it's a positive and a negative, it's going to be a negative. That will help you. One February day, the low temperature in St. Paul was negative 17 degrees. Over a period of 3 hours, the temperature rose 5 degrees Fahrenheit per hour. After 3 hours, what was the temperature? So you're looking at a rise in the temperature. It was negative 17, right? But we had over a period of 3 hours, the temperature rose 5 per hour. So I would be multiplying that 5 times 3, which would be 15. So I'm going to actually add the 15 to that, and we get a negative 2. It's right there. Let's look at number 32. Water has a freezing point of 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Mercury has a freezing point that is 70 degrees Fahrenheit lower. Oh, what is the freezing point of Mercury? So what I'm looking at is water has a freezing point of 32. Mercury has a freezing point that is 70 degrees Fahrenheit lower. So really it would be kind of like this 32, but then I'm having to subtract out the 70, right? Okay, so what is 32? 70 minus the 32. When I borrow, that's an 8 and that's a 3. Now my larger number was the negative 70. That's the larger absolute value. So it is negative 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, guys, these are the questions that are going to be similar to the ones that you're going to be seeing on your test. I do want you to go ahead and try to work through some of the ones that are there that are listed for you. Of course, you can see the answers are there, so you have some help working on the rest of those. I want to see how you guys can do on your own, just a little bit, just a little extra practice for you. Okay, guys, I look forward to seeing what you can do on your test very soon. Thank you.